Phillip Boutte Jr. has been working as a costume concept artist, production designer for film, music video, and television for the past 15 years. Within the last few years, he has illustrated for a multitude of blockbuster hits, including Marvel's Black Panther, Star Trek, Captain Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Avengers: Infinity War, Thor, Man of Steel, Inception, Justice League, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Greatest Showman, Jungle Cruise, and many more. He is also the co-founder of 9B Collective, the first Black-owned concept art studio made up primarily of BIPOC artists. Join us today as we sit down with our very special guest, Phillip Boutte Jr., for a roundtable conversation covering his early beginnings and career as a professional artist and production designer. Listen, because Phil, your resume is just so
it's really impressive.
It is, man. It's like I don't have like just a little soundbite intro for you.
We're gonna record one. It'll be okay.
Well, no, I'm gonna record one. I'm saying like we're gonna lead that into this. It's just no, I don't want to be like, well, here he is. Here he is.
It's like the Will Smith meme where it's just like
all of this. But damn. So our guest today is Phillip Boutte Jr. He's a renowned costume illustrator for film and theater and stage performances and all kinds of awesome stuff. He is the co-founder of 9B Collective. It is the first Black-owned concept art studio made up of primarily Black, Indigenous, people of color artists, and founded by Phillip, Mike Uwandi, and Aldis Hodge. Yes. Their goal is to provide a shift in entertainment in the entertainment landscape by working toward true inclusivity, both in front of and behind the camera. That's pretty awesome, man. That's
fantastic.
That's huge. And like, you not only like form the company, you like cherry pick, like that's like the best. I was like, ooh, they're working over there too. Like, oh my God.
We had to come correct. We had to make sure.
You did.
That, like,
yes.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you have to make sure that you're also able to deliver. And I think that's been a big thing, especially knowing that it is difficult. It's already difficult with marginalized groups to get into the industry and to be seen for their work just with no bias. Yet alone then coming in and kind of stating this is who we are, and then having eyes on you to be like, I wonder if this is going to be janky. You have to really deliver. So, and we can talk about that, but that's something where we definitely wanted to make sure that we were giving chances and then also making sure that we were providing the best work possible.
Yeah. So what was the moment where you knew you wanted to be an artist? Because everybody has that
like kind of aha moment.
Like I am not going to do that for the rest of my life. I want to do this.
I think it kind of organically happened. I've always drawn. I think like a lot of illustrators or people that draw, it's kind of like been something that's inherently been with me the whole time. I come to the industry in a different way. I was an actor when I was 3, like from 3 until around like 16, 17. So pretty much all of my formative years were spent in and out of school and acting and doing, commercials and TV shows and all of that stuff. But it was relatively normal. My parents kept it really grounded and made it more like a job, and that, always told me that if I didn't want to do it, that I could do something else, but also explained to me the connections that, I was garnered. Like they kind of explained it to me in a way to where it was always my choice, but also let me know what it was. But one of the key things that I'm really appreciative of them for is not only grounding me and providing support for all of the artistic ventures I wanted to try, but they also made sure to keep me a kid. So they made sure that I wasn't hanging out with adults and I wasn't like that like hot mess child actor that like is like just into everything. And because of that led to me sitting in my trailer a lot and doing my homework or drawing. So I drew all the time. My dad was a computer engineer for Unical. So the downtown LA building is where he worked. I think now it's a film studio, but it used to be the Unical building. And he would bring me the printers, I'm going to date myself, but the printers used to have like the little rings on the side, you know, that where you load it and it would like turn. So he used to bring me big boxes of those, and I would just sit and draw and flip and sit and draw and flip and, you know, think that I was drawing all kinds of fun stuff and characters and things like that, or comics, or, you know, flip books or whatever. So it was more like a hobby. I don't think I really took it serious until I kind of made the transition of thinking that I didn't want to act. Because I started to get ridiculously frustrated with the roles that I was being offered. And it's a story I tell all the time, but it's one of those things where I, you know, finally was able to start driving. So you're driving now. My parents aren't taking me to my auditions. And it's like one of those things where I'm auditioning for bigger roles, like roles that are really recognizable or on shows that are recognizable. But all the characters were just exactly the same. They were always some gang member or from a broken home or from the hood, or, you know, and it was also too, just to be real with it, it was also roles where it was like the main characters on the show would be the character kind of helping to turn the young troubled Black youth's life around. And I hated that so much. So I think, and it's not that those roles don't exist or that people like that don't exist. I just wasn't I was getting bombarded by those, and I didn't have enough roles that felt more like myself. So I noticed the imbalance. I'm like, I never go to audition for anyone that has two parents that, you know, like for me, two parents that graduated from UCLA, highly educated, middle class, like, you know, relatively like what you would call just normal, like just a normal situation. And that was normal for me and for a lot of my friends. That was what I grew up around, was Black people, that had, you know, their entire family. So it wasn't like single mom, like they try to make it seem like. It wasn't any of that. It was very much so, this is what it is. And I just noticed that none of the roles that I auditioned for were ever that way. So that's when I decided, I was like, you know what, maybe when I go to college, I'll pursue art and I'll try to use my art and film and kind of combine those two things together. So that was probably my more aha moment, as I started to take it more serious. I took some art classes in senior year of high school just to kind of prepare myself. And then when I went to college, my main goal was trying to combine art and film together so that I could still be in entertainment, because I had spent so much time doing it, but maybe be behind the scenes and then change that narrative by telling stories, or finding a way to where I could affect the stories in a positive way. And so that's kind of like how I got to that point where I was just like, you know what, like, let's see if we can kind of fix this. You know, that was kind of the start of my journey.
All right. That landscape hasn't really changed all that much.
It's going, finally, it's just, it didn't change quickly. That's the part. Like, there's still conversations like an example I could use that, like, I was just shocked it was still happening, because I have actor friends that stayed with it and they're on TV and stuff like that, and I talk to them. Just something as simple as, you know, hair and makeup. The problem that I always remember having, my mom did my hair, or I had a barber that would cut my hair, and my mom would do my makeup, because the people that were being paid thousands of dollars on set a week could not do it. And they're literally the department head. That is still happening. You have actresses like Viola Davis coming to set with her wigs done, or like having to have her own makeup artist. And then in that instance too, not having makeup artists that can get into the union that can actually work on us. So that part is super frustrating. For me, it's never been a thing where I completely understood it, because it's like working on people of color is treated in college or in school like an elective. Like, you can elect to do that, but it's just weird. If you're working on people, it feels like you shouldn't get out of college not knowing how to do that. That just makes no sense. So then it's doubly frustrating when now you're the makeup or hair department head and you can't work on the main talent, or you can't work on a whole subsection of people. It's frustrating. I'm going on a tangent, but basically, like, that change, I'm still shocked that those conversations are still happening now, you know?
Phil, that infuriates me, but it shocks me at the same time, but I'm not surprised either.
Yeah.
Because, all right, so the makeup department. I've met a makeup artist, and they have like cakes of flesh tones, right? They have to like blend you out, even you out. They're trained to apply makeup to Caucasian skin. That's the whole job. If you come in with anything else other than what they know, you might as well go sit outside.
Get ready for a ride. They will paint you lighter first and then apply the makeup on top. They'll do all kinds of weird stuff. I've had hair people where I've said, I need a fade, and they pull out scissors, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, literally, like, or I've had the person that comes up and kind of sprays water in my hair and kind of does some weird thing where like they're like brushing, and then they're like, okay, you're good, and I'm just like, what did you do? Like, and then
do anything.
Yeah, you didn't do anything, or I have to redo it. It's just very apparent that it's not something that they can do. And I'm fine with saying that you don't know, but I also, to a degree, am frustrated that, some of them get paid a lot of money. This is thousands of dollars a week, and you can't work on these people. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's infuriating. Like, you're not good at your job. You should be able to work on everyone. And if you can't, you should not be in charge of this department. And that's just how I feel about it. And that goes across the board. We're still stuck in the valley of the firsts, right? Like the first Black people to do this, the first, and it's just, or the first woman to do this. Like it's crazy to me. So it's like, we're still in the place where just up until like last year, they just started making flesh tone ballet tights for like Black people, or like shoes, so that they don't have to sit and paint their shoes with makeup before every performance. It's those things that are like, it's happening. So I'm grateful. It is happening. We are seeing progress, but we still have a ways to go. And in entertainment, it's not any different. A full circle moment for me, like telling you what changed to be positive, was working on A Wrinkle in Time and Black Panther at the same time. So I was going back and forth between the two of those. So in that moment, there are moments in life where you feel like, oh man, like I missed this. Or like when you look back on something, like right now, I look back on the times that, like, even just right out of college, where like I had zero responsibilities, but I felt like I was so busy. And now I'm actually busy, and I'm like, ooh, I'd love to go back to that. Or like parts where you were just like, man, how am I going to come up with my $600 in rent? And now I'm like, $600, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I would love that, like, so it's those. But I remember being in a moment where, for that particular moment in time, I was very present. I could see it through my daughter, that my daughter was going to grow up in a world where she had Barack and Michelle as like her first like kind of understanding of like who the president and the first lady are. She had shows like Doc McStuffins, and Ant Farm with China McClain. Like, she had all these kind of positive things going on and representation. And then she was going to be getting Black Panther and then A Wrinkle in Time, which one of the biggest complaints I had growing up is I love adventure movies. I love them. So I love Goonies and Neverending Story and Willow and Flight of the Navigator, like all those types of like fun, just kid goes on an adventure. And I used to challenge my friends. I would like, tell me one movie that's like that, where a little person of color goes on an adventure. And they'd be like, ah, and then they would stop. And then they'd be like, oh, like, I'd be like, right. Exactly, like no live action type thing. So it just felt like in that moment, I could see that there was a change, and I was a part of it, which felt like I kind of had accomplished what I had set out to do. And then from there, it was like, okay, now how can I further this along, which is how I kind of led down this path, because that was a benchmarking point for me. But I remember being very present that was happening in real time.
My brother would say Bebe's kids, but I don't think Bebe's kids counts.
It does not.
Like
no, it does
not. You got to meet Oprah Winfrey. I remember you posting about that.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know. How do you describe Oprah? Like, other than just being like, like that, like you said, the Will Smith meme. Just
like, it's you.
She's just, I mean, and the thing is so I will say, she's just everything. She's everything that I would have imagined. She doesn't disappoint, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. She is present. She's kind. She's welcoming and warm. Like the way that happened was when we were working on Wrinkle, she had to come in to do a fitting. And I knew she was coming, but you know, it's Oprah. So she's got security, she's got all these things to make sure that she's safe and all of that. But she's still, you know, approachable, but I didn't think I was going to meet her. I poked my head out of the office when she was coming up and I was like, I saw Oprah. That was like enough for me, where I was like, I saw her walk in and I thought that was going to be it. But I had also given to my boss, Paco Delgado, the costume designer for the movie, I had drawn Oprah for the 2016 Governor's Ball, the big party that they have after the Oscars, because a costume designer, Jeffrey Kurland, had been designing, you know, the Governor's Ball for a few years, and I would work with him with drawing the costumes for like the waiters or like whatever, you know, the designs. He would come up with the theme every year. That year, the theme was it was geared towards the restaurant, the Brown Derby, which is that famous restaurant that has all the caricatures on the wall. Like it's like covered in caricatures, right? So he picked a color palette of like blush and pink and, you know, tan. It was like a very like floral color palette, pastel color palette. And then he wanted a team of illustrators that I put together. It was 9 of us, and we all did about 20 something drawings in Hirschfeld style to be on the walls, right? So and they were blown up like really big, and they had black frames, and they were across the whole Governor's Ball all around. So I had drawn Oprah for that. I did an illustration of her where it was like some different roles that she's played, and that was up on the wall. And a caveat to that story is I wanted to draw Ava DuVernay. So I decided, you know, like I had been following her work and watching. She wasn't initially on that list of people because it was like directors, producers, you name it, actors, like it was all these different people and from the past and the present. And so I asked if I could put her on that list because I wanted to make sure she was included, and I wanted to draw her. Like I was like, I must draw her. So I did, but then that year she didn't come because she did a benefit for Flint, Michigan for the water crisis. So she had a whole thing that same night as a statement to say, this is more important to me, which I respected. So I drew it, didn't think anything of it. I'm kind of caveating back to this, but I'll get to it. And so, you know, a couple months later from that point, I just decided to post the illustrations. So I posted and I said, this was my illustration of Ava DuVernay. She didn't make it to the Governor's Ball, but I wanted to make sure she was included, you know, whatever I tweeted, right? I tweeted it and put it out, and that was it. She liked it, and then she followed me, and I was like, what is going on? Like, so that was enough for me, where I was like, great. But the next day I got a call from producers at Disney that said, hey, we're working on this movie. Ava DuVernay saw your work and she wants you to come in and interview for this movie. So I did. And so, you know, of course, like a nerd, I went and printed it out right away and framed it. And I took it. I was like, hello, you know, like, and gave her the illustration. And she hired me, and that's how I got that job. So cut to, because everyone really doesn't know that story, but that's how I got that job and how I met and started working on that. You cut back to Oprah. When Oprah came in, same thing. I had printed out the illustration, and I just wanted my boss to give it to her because I didn't know if she had saw it, right? So she comes in, I peek down, I look, I see her, I go back, and I'm just working. So I'm actually physically working, not paying any attention. I'm in my dark office drawing on my Cintiq. My boss, Paco, comes back and he says, hey, Phil, Oprah wants to meet you. And like, I feel like everything just like, I don't remember what happened after that. It was like everything kind of slowed down, and I was just like, wait, what? Like I couldn't comprehend what was going on. And so he's like, come with me. So I go and I walk down, and there she is. She's in her fitting room. She had just, you know, tried on clothes and stuff like that. And they had all my illustrations of her from Wrinkle laid out. And then she starts asking me questions. She's like, nice to meet you. These are great, you know, and she was very complimentary. And I feel like in my head the whole time I was panicking because I was just like, Oprah's asking me questions about my life. It's all I could think of was like, Oprah Winfrey's asking me questions about my life. Like, what do I say? But she was very complimentary and nice. And she was asking me same things you guys are asking me. How long have I been drawing? What led me down that path? So I told her the story. And then she just was very present and open and honest about everything. And she gave me a compliment. She said, my mother must be very proud of me, which I'm just like, that was like, you know, like, I was like, oh my gosh, it was great. So then I called my mom, and my mom was screaming for like 15 minutes. Like, it was And then, gave her a hug, and I was going to leave and she's like, do you want a picture? And I didn't want to ask her, but I was like, yes. So we took a picture. She wanted a picture for herself.
That's
And
so
so then
cool.
she also sent it to me, which was great. And that was really just a nice moment. And then I since had met her again on set. And the thing about Oprah is, so I walked onto set, she was coming out of something. She walked up to me, she remembered my name. This had to have been like a month later. She remembered my name, she remembered me. She took pause and she stopped to talk to me, which I thought was really, nice and just normal. But then she said, I said, I was kind of surprised. Like, so I said, oh, it's like, you remember. She's like, of course. And she kind of told me a piece of advice, which I thought was great. So, how like everyone knows in Hollywood or even in entertainment, or if you even just go somewhere where you're with your peers, right? A lot of Hollywood people do that eye dart thing where they're constantly looking at other people to see who's more important to talk to. Oprah is very focused. So when she talks to you, it's you and you alone, no one else, no eye darting. And she's just talking directly to me. And she basically kind of said something along the lines of, I take in moments as they come. I never know where I'm going to be. So when I have a moment, this is that moment, and then I move on. So she's very present. And I wanted to learn that presentness. Like, it feels like because she's ushered to different places and she's so busy, she really does take in every single moment as it unfolds right in front of her. And she makes sure to take the time to respect and honor the person that's with her. So it's like every bit about that just felt very Oprah-esque to me. And it was just the nicest, kindest thing. I didn't have one bad thing to say about her.
Wow. That's incredible.
I wanted to ask you about your job title.
Mm-hmm.
There are costume designers, costume illustrators. It's a two-part question, but can you tell me what is the difference between a costume designer and a costume illustrator?
It's a question we get all the time. It's really simple. It's like, we are by trade, the costume illustrator is there to help the costume designer showcase their ideas, right? So that's pretty much the basis of the job. The job has transitioned and changed a bit. It used to be very traditional. It's just like, designer gives you something to draw, you draw it as best you can, because oftentimes the illustrator can draw better than the designer. Not always. I will say there are some designers that draw really well, but for the most part, they're hiring an illustrator to that's the first initial punch, or the first time anyone sees the idea that the designer has passed the mood board or like reference photos, that's the first shot at design. So our job it's more of a collaborative kind of supportive job. It's to be there for the designer to pull information out of them, to get the ideas onto paper, or in this case, into your computer in a nice, beautiful image that really sells what that idea is. That's our job. Now, granted, the thing that kind of makes it to where it gets even more confusing is that, to a degree, like, drawing is design, right? Like, you can't be someone that illustrates and not design. That's just impossible. That's the way you communicate. So it really is almost like a symbiotic, like, we are designer, like we are Venom, like it's that like, it's together, you're designing together. And oftentimes, for the concept side, because concept art is industry standard, right? That job has transitioned more into concept art. So what it becomes is that we are also designing, meaning that the designer might set the tone, right? So the designer says, this character is super vain and she's going to be dressed in all green, right? She's very envious. She's envious. She's dressed in all green and she wears different like power suits or whatever, right? So that's kind of the general, that the designer read the script and then makes a choice, right? And from there, they might say, hey, I have this reference photo. I really want you to try this, and let's put it on Cate Blanchett because that's the person that's playing the role or whatever. So you start to draw, but then the designer might also say, give me 5 or 6 different options. And so now I'm designing within that range. It's like getting a client brief. So I'm designing within that range, but it's under the, the tutelage or the direction of the designer. And that goes for production design and everything else, same thing. So it's like kind of like we're all designing together with a head of department.
Got it. So the costume designers, like that art director,
they're the art director. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And great costume designers are great art directors. That's exactly what it is.
Okay. All right. So Do you think that you would want to do that job, or?
I could play around with it. I have on my current job, I'm an assistant costume designer. So I did make the jump to switch to doing that, which I can still do my concept art, but I get to see the suits and stuff, or the superhero suits, because my specialty is specialty costume. So like superhero suits, like anything that needs to be manufactured and made in that kind of way, I can usually do. And it's something I've done my entire career. So I do have interest in it for sure. I'm still filling it out. I think the key thing for me right now has been to be a little bit more involved in the department, be able to see things more through. But I'm also still very aware that I definitely want to be around more for my daughter in her formative years and not start traveling and be away for months at a time. So that's kind of why the concept side is great. The assistant costume design side is great for specialty, but then it also allows me to not be gone filming for 4 or 5 months in Budapest or wherever. You know what I mean? I don't have to do that part. And later on, maybe I will. I think that's the one caveat for me that's been a decision to not fully go into design, is the time away from family.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't like, if I could do work, I probably would be more swayed to do it if I could find a job in town. Like if I could film in LA, then I definitely would do it.
Well,
So-
oh no, go ahead.
Huh? Oh, I actually wanted to back up just a little bit, because I remember when you said when you were in college, you wanted to combine film and art, and you specifically went into costume design. And I was just curious as to how that union became costume design, because there's a lot of art that you can do for film. So I wanted to know what drew you specifically to that field in particular, and how you broke into it in the first place.
Yeah, I've started production designing first. So I production designed. So in college, for the most part, I was a production designer. So
Yeah.
I tried to figure out like what can I do to combine these two things together. And all of the film kids were like, oh, you should be my production designer, you should be my art director, or whatever it was. So I was like, okay. So I started to figure that out, and that's what I did. So there's a key point of advice that someone gave me. I always say this, I wish I remember who it was, but someone said, when you're in school or when you're in college, once you graduate, it takes 3 to 4 years or 3 to 5 years. I'm sure that time frame is different now because of the internet, but 3 to 5 years, I just dated myself again. 3 to 5 years where when you get out of school, people will start to call you and you're not calling them. So,
Yeah.
Me being the smartass that I was like, well, I'm going to get that 3 years out of the way while I'm in school at the same time. So I started to do work every semester off, like every break, I filmed something, or I went and volunteered and did something, which actually led me to, I prop mastered a short film musical called West Bank Story. And it was like the whole it was West Side Story, but like the Palestinians versus the Israelis, and there was like falafels, and it was a whole musical number. It was really fun, like the whole thing. It's great, and it won an Oscar. It actually won an Oscar for that year that it was submitted, and it was great. And so that was kind of that, like it just kind of kept going. I made a lot of contacts, off and on, and I would keep in contact with people. So then that led me to starting to do like music videos and all of that stuff. So realistically, it did work. By the time I graduated, I didn't have a question as to be like, okay, now what? Like I wasn't starting from graduation like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? I was already working at that point. And I had clients that would call me. So I actually did what I had set out to do. It wasn't until I started working, I had a teacher in Long Beach, Robin Richardson, who is a costume illustrator, and she's also a storyboard artist, right? So she does both. And we knew what she did, but your teachers is like, she's really humble, so she doesn't talk about it much. Like we would just come back from break and be like, hey, Robin, what'd you work on? And she's like, oh, I storyboarded this Aeon Flux movie. And we're like, cool. And then we just move on to whatever. Like she would just tell us, or she would show us stuff where she I costume illustrated, Polar Express, she did like Forrest Gump. She did all these fun movies, right? And her style is very illustrative with like watercolor, and now she's moved to digital, but she could just draw and paint anything and do it in watercolor really quickly. So we knew what her job was, but I took an interest in just costume illustration in general. It was my favorite class in college, was just drawing people in costumes. It was fun. It was kind of like by the time you get to that class, you've already taken like nude figure drawing and oil painting, and you've taken all these classes. And so now you're finally putting clothes on people. And that I found that interesting. So cut back to that. Once we graduated from college, I was already production designing, doing my job, but my friend Oksana and my friend Brian Valenzuela, they all wanted to go to Comic-Con. And so we're like, okay, let's go. So we all went. And we were just doing our thing. We had our portfolios. So we were showing our portfolios to like Wizards of the Coast and Blizzard and all these different people that go to Comic-Con, right? Just trying to see like, okay, let's see if we can get some illustration jobs. And I had always still looked at illustration at that point because I was production designing. I looked at it as like a secondary job. Like, okay, like in between doing a commercial, I could draw for this or do that or whatever. It was just another avenue that I knew that, you know, a way to make money if something was going on. So I was trying to be like multifaceted. Oksana saw a panel on the Comic-Con schedule for costume designers. And she was like, isn't this what Robin does? And I was like, I think so. And she wanted to drag, like, she literally dragged me and Brian to it. Cause we're like, we need to go to Hall H and see some nerdy stuff. And she's like, no, let's go to this costume design panel. And we're like, what? Like, it's at the same time, like we were like battling about it, but we went. We were like, let's go. So we were like, let's go see what it is. And the costume designers there it was Judiana Makovsky, who did, she's now done Endgame and Infinity War. She did Harry Potter. And then Isis Musenden, who did like Wolverine, and she did Narnia, right? So we go, and I forget who else was on the panel, but we go, I should actually look it up because I'm pretty sure I know them, and they're probably mad that I leave them out every time I tell the story. But those are the two that I remember being there. So we went down the line because there's an autograph panel after, and we were like, let's just show them our portfolios because we're showing them to everybody else. So we did. We went down the line. We showed them our portfolios. We had business cards, the whole thing. We left business cards. We left, didn't think anything of it. That next week. So now granted, I always say this, Comic-Con is in July. We graduated, fully graduated, fresh new graduates in June, right? So we're a month out from graduating, pretty much. That next week after Comic-Con, Oksana gets a call because her watercolors and her drawings are just beautiful. And EC says, how would you like to go to Prague with me for 8 months to do Narnia 2? So she gets hired, she works in LA for like a month, and then she goes off literally to Prague and works on this awesome, fantastic fantasy movie for 8 or 9 months. Now, granted, I'm still working. Me and Brian are both looking at each other like, whoa, that's crazy. That's such a crazy, great job. Like straight out, she joins the union. She's got great benefits. She's getting paid well, all of that stuff. So just still working. Towards the end of that year, that first year, I said, you know what, I'm going to join that. But I'm still thinking of it for me as more like a in between jobs. I could do a costume illustration job. I didn't think of it as a full-time job, right? Because there was no precedence for that. Like it was always like, you do this job, but it's just something you can do. So I joined in December, like the end of December, and then I got a call in January when everything starts back up, and it was with Sonia Hayes for The Mummy 3 with Jet Li. And so that was my first costume illustration job, and it was long. It was like 6 months. So it was a very long job of working and drawing and learning. And then I even went to Montreal where they were filming I wanted to go see it. So I stayed with Sonia and her family and got to go to set for a few days and see how everything was working and really learn and watch action sequences film in real life. It was fun. It was just a fun experience. And when I came back, I went straight back into production designing again. And so I was doing music videos and commercials and stuff like that. And then it started to be that thing. Every once in a while, I would take a costume illustration job. There's a place that everyone sets up offices and works called Western Costume in North Hollywood. So shout out to Eddie Marks and the whole crew at Western Costume. That's kind of where I cut my teeth in costume. So there was tons of designers there, and they were all working on different projects. And so what happened that first year of working is I just started to go from place to place, and I was just showing my work and getting work on all these different films. So I think that year it was like Bedtime Stories, Wolverine, Terminator, Salvation. And then Brian, remember the one that I talked about, Brian saw that we were successful at working. And so he's like, I'm going to join too. So he joined at the end of that year, and he got the reboot, the J.J. Abrams reboot of Star Trek. And so when they wanted another illustrator, he told them about me, and then they hired me. So it was with Michael Kaplan. So we're freaking out because we're working with Michael Kaplan, who did the original Blade Runner. And we're like, this is amazing. Like, we're adults, we've got real jobs. Like, that was kind of like the start of that whole thing. So that's how I transitioned into that, which everyone always asks me that, but it was like, I didn't go down that path, but I just kind of transitioned into it. And I've been working ever since. And then at a certain point, costume took over, like to where I was getting so many costume jobs and the pay scale was really nice, and I was working and learning more, that I kind of stopped designing. So I think production designing, the last thing that I production designed was around the time of that Oscars. I production designed Break Free, the song with Ariana Grande. I did that video, which was like Barbarella themed. And then I also did her first, it was like crazy. It was like a crazy video. It was fun though. She's fun and she's really nice. It was a crazy video shoot. I remember staying up like for the actual shoot itself, like 24 hours or something crazy. And then I got called back again I designed the stage for her first VMA performance. So if you go back and watch that, she comes out of a spaceship and there's like rocks and she sings Break Free. And then it moves to Nicki Minaj, who sings Anaconda. And then it goes to all three. It's her, Jessie J, and Nicki Minaj, and they perform Bang Bang. Yeah. So that was like the last big thing that I designed, which was super fun. But my drawing has taken me so many different places. Sometimes it's like unreal. Like, I'm like, I get paid to draw and get to do this fun. It's just fun, you know?
That's amazing. And meanwhile, Esther's over here losing their mind.
That's like childhood right there. That was, I mean, not to date anybody here, but I'm just like, oh, I did not realize. Holy crap.
It's one of the things, because I think it was also during that time too. It was before, it's not pre-internet, it's just before internet was the way it is now, where you showcase everything. So everyone's like, how come you don't put this stuff up? And I'm like, maybe I will. Like, it's like one of those things, because even some of the directors, like I found when I did Jupiter's Legacy with Stephen DeKnight, and he had put I think on Twitter, someone had said something about, he had posted a frame from a movie. I think it was like Space Odyssey or something like that, where it looks like there's a flight attendant and there's a pin floating and she grabs it, and everyone's like, how'd they do that? And it was just like plexiglass and there was a pin on it and she grabs it. So that was like the movie trick, right? So I made a comment like, I did that same trick for this video. And he's like, how come you never said you could do this? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's just something, because basically what we did is that same trick, I did it with Ariana Grande. So I built a big, like 10-foot tall stage. If you go back and watch the video, there's shots where it looks like she's floating and she's taking off a spacesuit and she's in a room and it looks like she's in zero gravity. The way we did that is there was a big plexi stage on truss, like a moving stage, right? And it's 10 feet high. And below it, there's a room that's built on the floor. So when the camera cranes and looks on top, it looks like you're in the room and the room is right side up. So she's laying on plexi and doing the whole performance. And that's how we did that. But it's so the same exact shot, just in a bigger. So it was like that type of stuff. And people are always like, how come you never talk about this stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just part of my life. Like, I have no idea, you know? But sometimes it's really fun to go back and look at it. And it is something that I'm working on now. I'm actually building my own personal website, and I'm going to put my production design stuff on there so I can at least have a time capsule to remember, because there was a lot of work in that. I did like a lot of work with a company called London Alley, who is now like one of the biggest music video companies like in the world. And that was with my friend Luca Podesta, who is a Loyola Marymount graduate. And his thesis project was a music video that he wanted to do. And so he typed into the internet, he typed in art director, Panic at the Disco. And then he found my name and then hired me to do it. And then it just kind of just spawned us doing all these videos together. What? And now his company is literally like, it's like the top company in the world, you know, like they're amazing. And I had a lot of friends there too. So a lot of my friends that I still have are from that time period. But I did learn a lot. I owe it to them because I did learn a lot about art direction and management and time management during that time with having those crews and like doing so many videos and things like that. So it's those skill sets still help me now today.
That's fantastic. That's a really cool story too. Like, wow.
It's a lot. I look back on it and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, like there was a lot going on, but I definitely feel grateful for it. It was a good experience.
So as a production designer in those for the Ariana Grande performance, do you come up with I know you came, do you come up with the concept and then structurally tell people how you want it to be, or is it you come up with the concept and somebody else has to figure out how to make your idea reality?
In those cases, like that video is directed by Chris Mars Polaro. Great guy, awesome. And he brought me onto the project, I think, or at least with that, we were like paired together. I don't remember the exact story of how we ended up meeting or working together, but we worked together several times. I also did, was it the Black Keys, Howlin' for You, I think was him too as well. So we had worked together several times, and that was a fun one. That one was like almost like it shot like a B movie trailer, which was super fun. So I think in that instance, the director is the one that does the treatment. So he did the treatment for what that video was, what Break Free was, and then he gets awarded the bid based on like the studio being like, yeah, we like that idea. Because several directors have turned in like, they listen to the song and then they come up with the idea of what they see. And his idea was like this full campy Barbarella thing, and Ariana liked that. So that was kind of what they went for. But then it's the same thing. He then gives me the treatment. I read it, listen to the song over and over, and then I start visually thinking about what that's going to look like or where we can get the stuff. And then I hire a crew, and then, you know, an art director and all that stuff. And I co-designed a lot of those videos with my buddy in crime, Jeff Flint. Shout out to Jeff. Jeff is now an amazing production designer all on his own. And so it's been one of those things where we did a lot of work together, but from there we kind of started writing out treatments. And for a long time, I did also write treatments. So it would be like, I'd get the song, Lugo would let me listen to the song. And the key thing for there was budget, right? Because budget is a big deal. And sometimes you don't have a big budget. So I would listen to songs over and over and over again and just let my mind wander. Because that's one thing that I love to do. It's like a hobby. I daydream all day. So when I'm listening to a song, I'm constantly thinking of visuals for whatever that song makes me feel like or what it gives me. And then I would just write out treatments based on that visual. But the key component there that was helpful was that I would also write out things that I knew could be executed, because I knew how much stuff costs. So I had like this little library in my head of like all the prop houses around what things cost. So I'm like, okay, it could be this and it could be that, and we could get this from here and that from there. So that's kind of how that kind of started, you know, that process starts. But it's the same thing. There's always like someone in charge, or a director or an art director or something, but then the creativity kind of spawns from thinking outside the box or starting to really visually let your mind wander and be like, oh, it could be this and it could be that and it could be that color palette. So it's like a quick kind of thing. And I think on most videos, especially during that time, I maybe had like a day or two to draw, like if anything, to like physically draw stuff out. And then from there, it was like putting crew together, renting stuff, going to prop houses, looking for all the materials. And it just comes up really quick. You do the job, you set up everything, you film, and then it all gets broken down, taken back, you wrap out your stuff. And it's like a full just, and you might have like a day or something off. And then they're like, hey, Phil, we got another video. And you're right back in it again, you know? It's a whole deal.
On that note, actually, if you don't mind, Eric, I just you mentioned time management earlier, and you're kind of like what you're talking about now. I just wonder how do you manage your time, because these kinds of jobs sort of, you know, they never come up usually when you want them, right? And then when you're so busy, that's when everyone calls as well. And you have a family, you have a company, and your work. Like, how do you manage all of it?
I don't even know if I have a proper answer to that. I think I'm just crazy. I think that's probably just batshit crazy. I think pacing. A lot of things it's time. So it's segmented time and prioritizing time. So I try to prioritize, like, I need time for this or that. And I do everything through little, everything that I do is almost governed by little markers of time. I'll actually show you guys really quickly. I have this. So I got this little guy, the target, which is great, right? And so I just flip them over. I think this is a 30-minute one. I remember thinking it was an hourglass and it was only 30 minutes. And I remember thinking, damn, that was fast. And it took me like a long time to figure out that it was only 30 minutes. So it was this, but I use this and I just will put it on my desk and I'll say, okay, Phil, you have to send out all your emails. I turn it over, and when that's done, I try to get that done before this time, right? And I like the analogness of it. Don't ask me. Everyone's like, why don't you just use your iPhone? I'm like, because this is cool looking, you know, like,
way cooler.
like that's why. So I think I try to do that. I also have learned more to delegate, you know, to like delegate out things that I know that I'm not going to get to. And to be fair, I'm not going to be the person that makes it sound magical. Sometimes I fail at it, just like everybody else. It's hard. It's definitely hard to balance. I'll nail something over here, but then this other thing drops off because I wasn't paying it any attention. That's just the nature of the beast. But I do try to be as efficient as I can. And then I try to give myself grace to do things that are fun, you know, like play a video game or take a walk, or, you know, like whatever it is, self-care. I try to find times to do that as well. But there's no real answer to it other than just prioritizing your time and then trying to make sure at bare minimum the time that you do spend is efficient. So I'm like, if I only have an hour, I'm like, how can I present myself in the best way possible in this hour, as opposed to setting an unrealistic expectation and then failing and not being able to finish that task. I tell artists that all the time, because in production, everyone's always like, how fast are you? Or like how long, everyone really stresses on how long did it take you to draw that? And I'm like, that's not necessarily the most important part. The most important part for a production illustrator is execution and meeting your deadline and meeting it at all costs. Like to make sure that you're, under promising and over delivering. So it's like, I want to make sure, like, if I know a director's coming and they're like, hey, we have this one character and we really need to show something, and the director will be here in an hour. I'm not gonna in an hour decide to start in ZBrush. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna sketch something out really quick and I'm gonna say, what style do I possess that within an hour I get the maximum amount of effort or work to where I can show something that's presentable. And then I do that all the time. I'm like, if I've got a week, I might use a longer process. If I've got a few days, you know, like it's trying to, if you have to know yourself, you have to know how you work, what you can produce. But I also think you have to be flexible and not have only one way of doing things. You're like, this is the only way I designed, and you're going to fail. You have to be like, okay, in this instance, I design like this, but in this instance, given these parameters, I take a little bit more care. And then presentation is obviously important. So how you present the ideas, how you showcase them, you know, that's also can help you out. Those are all little tricks. And then just the other thing I think is really been important to me is being a self-starter, which is I don't sit and wait. Like if you give me a task and I finish it, you're not gonna ever come back to me and find me just being like, oh, I finished that 20 minutes ago. What else you got? Like I'll probably be finding, or I've done something else. I'm like, well, I might as well go in and do some head studies since I'm already here, or I might explore the crown or something. I'm always gonna find something else to do. And I feel like that quality sometimes gets lost or it's not taught anymore. And I feel like that's something that you have to be aware of, learning the job. That's another thing that I do, is that in my downtime, I go and learn about the department. So I go and talk to the seamstress or the cutter fitter or the agent dyer, and I find out like what their job is. What are you doing? How does it tell? You would be surprised if you just get in the habit of doing that, how much you learn over time, you know, where you actually learn how the department functions. They're like, hey, you're doing the accounting. How does that work? Like, what's this going on? What's a PO? Like, it's like asking questions and then learning and kind of taking it all with you. And then over the course of even like a year, if you've been lucky enough to be working, you've learned a lot more than just your normal job, you know, like, and I think that that's how you do it. All of those things are segmented pieces of time. And then they all kind of combine back together. But it's not like I just sit there and do as I'm told. I've always been that way. I've always had to try and like figure something out or learn in the situation that I'm in. When I had like quote unquote regular jobs, I would only ever last like 6 months because I would learn everything and then be bored, right? Like, you know, like, or I would get promoted and then be bored. Like they'd be like, oh, you know, you're part-time, you know, front desk, and you greet people. And then it's like, oh, now you're gonna do the bills. Okay, like I worked at a credit union, and they're like, okay, now you're full-time. And then they're like, now you're gonna be a loan officer. And then I quit because I was like, nope, I am not gonna look back on my life and be like, how did I become a banker? Like, I don't want to be a banker. Like, you know, so I quit. I was like, nope, I can see where this is going because I keep leveling. And I was just like, nope, this is not what I want to do. I think that's another key thing to tell people too, is that if you have your dream, you really have to surround yourself in it and surround yourself with like-minded people and be unrelenting. Even if it's just like to make ends meet, I would have rather worked at an art store than to like take a job at Starbucks or somewhere else that's random. No offense to anyone that's worked at Starbucks. I'm just saying, like, I tried to make sure that I was in art at all times. That was kind of my goal.
Can you tell us about 9B Collective? Like, where did the name of that company come from?
Oh, the name. So the name is actually, the name is somewhat of a joke and somewhat serious. The name comes from the 9B art pencil. So
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. It's the 9B art pencil, which, as you know, is one of the darkest ones. So that's why we picked that. And then also you have to be, to a degree, we felt you need to be really professional or pro to use it because it can ruin your illustration quickly. So we felt like you have to be able to wield the power of it, but then it's also black, blackity black. And that's why we picked it.
I feel like we should insert that we should insert that GIF image of the guy going like this.
Yeah.
Right?
There's been a few people that have figured it out too. They're like, oh, it's the black pencil. And I'm like, exactly. So that's kind of what we picked. But we wanted to have something that wasn't just right on the nose and then also didn't alienate people and stuff, but we wanted to have, a little bit of fun. So that's where that name comes from.
So what is it like for you? Tell us what it's like for you as the co-founder of this company. That's such a huge endeavor and the first of its kind. What does that mean to you personally?
It's been great. It means a lot to me because it's the work that we're doing, I feel like, is necessary and needed. But also, in a way, the key thing that we do to set out is to provide opportunity and to get people to truly do the work of diversifying and understand what that means. It's not blanketed. It's not just trying to fill a quota or doing it just because it's trendy. It's trying to showcase art in a way that shows how our world actually is. Like inviting people to the table, allowing them to be a part of telling their own stories, to wield the power to be able to do that. So I think that's something that's been really interesting to me, is that it was never for us about starting it for monetary gain so much as like we saw a problem and we're actionable people. Like we love that. I love a good actionable item. Like what can I do to solve this? So you'll see for me, even in conversations, if I get into a conversation where I feel like it's just swirling around and it turns into a complaining conversation, I'm out. Like I can't focus on it because I'm like, I will always focus on, so how do we end that? What's the goal? Or like when I see people complaining, I'm like, what's your goal? What's the end goal? You're complaining, what do you want? What's the actual end goal? Let's figure out how to solve it. Like that's just the way that I am. That's the way that we all are. Me, Mike, and Aldous are the same way. So that was kind of the initial pinpoint of that. The company started from a drink and draw that we did back in 2020 with the Concept Art Association. So Nicole Hendricks and Rachel Meinerding, they do a drink and draw every month. And for that month, specifically for Black History Month, they wanted to bring us in to have us do it, right? So put together, a theme, which was Afrofuturism, Afropunk. And then we used the Jackson Agency, which is a Black talent agency. And they got us 2 models. And then from there went to Western Costume. Eddie let us get costumes, which we put together. So we pulled clothes, had a fitting, and did the whole thing. So the thing that was historic about that was it was in downtown LA at the Far Bar in Little Tokyo. And it maxed out to capacity. It was 150 people plus with a line out the door. And there was a lot of Black artists there. So Black artists, producers, directors, and it was the first time that we had all ever been in the same place even. Like, so some of us knew of each other, but we work in different fields. So like, I'm never gonna randomly bump into like animation people because I'm working primarily in live action, right? So we're all together. It's a great night. People are drawing, having a good time. There's good music, all that stuff. So I just kind of house kept. So I walked around the whole time, made sure everything was good. And I talked talk to people. And that's where it kind of started, was talking to people and getting the story. So someone would say, I work at a huge video game company. There's 400 employees. There's only 3 Black people, and we're in different departments and we never work together. So that was like, okay. And then same thing would happen with anybody, like with just different people. Like, so it was just that story was universally kind of the same, right? So the first thing that spawned out of that was us feeling like we needed to build a community, which was like, let's build a community. And then we're like, let's do more drink and draws. So let's go around the city and get drink and draws together and formulate our own. And then of course, that was February of 2020. And in March, everything shut down. So I was like, womp womp. Like it was just kind of like, it just sucked, right? We were like, well, that's not happening. But what it did is it spawned the birth of the idea, which was better because it made us think that we needed to think bigger. So then George Floyd happened. There was all these things that happened. 2020 felt like just like 10 years all in one. It was like one thing after another. And it just really allowed us to see that we could think bigger and do this on a bigger scale. And so that's kind of where 9B came from, was the initial thought of, let's do this on a big scale, invite artists from all over the world, find artists of color that want to come in and actually be a part of a community. And then let's get them onto projects where not only are they on the project, but they're on the project with a team of people of color and they can work together. So like literally that was like tunnel vision. That was the solve, right? What spawned from that is also thinking about, even for myself, I thought about it for myself. Once I started talking to people, I said, what have I done? I was like, so I realized Ruth Carter for Black Panther was my first Black box out of that entire career. Now, remember, I started back in 2007. So Black Panther was what, 2018 when I was working on it, or maybe 2017, because I can't remember when it came. Did it come out? It came out in 2019. 2018 or 19?
2018, yeah.
So that would be 16th,
yes.
2018. There
you go. So that's the year before that was when I worked. So she was my first Black boss out of that entire time, and I had been working since 2007. Raphael Phillips, who's a good friend of mine on Jupiter's Legacy, he was the first Black artist I ever sat next to, where we were actually in the same place. So that's 2007 all the way to 2019. So I was like, this is a problem. And I started to illuminate and see it. And I started to ask all my friends of color. So I was asking my Asian friends, I was asking everybody, like, what's your experience and how can we make it better? And like, for a lot of my Asian friends, it was just representation, period. They're like, there's nothing geared that's specifically towards us or like showcases our culture, or we're kind of in it, but not really. So the numbers were even lower, right? So I was like, okay, we have to figure this out. And I started talking to my Indian friends. Like, it's just like, you start talking to everybody and everybody has a similar story or something where they're telling you kind of what the issues are and what their feelings are. So that was kind of the initial start of trying to figure out how to make a difference there, which led us to other things. When I started thinking about the entire pipeline, we started seeking to volunteer our time to fix the overall pipeline. So now we're not even talking about just getting people work. We're saying, let's go back and talk to elementary school kids and their parents, because the parents are the ones that support. So you can show kids stuff and they'll be interested, but if their parents can't support it, it falls flat, right? Mm-hmm. So that was something I started to look to in my own life to say, how can we fix this? I was talking to people in the neighborhood. There was a couple that were like, my child's artistic. And they said it like she was like a leper or something. Like, we don't know what to do with her. Like, she likes drawing. We don't know what that is. Like, so I was saying, well, what does she like to do? So I asked them questions. They're like, she just, every like few months, she just gets really bored with her room and she switches it all around, and she changes stuff and she gets really into like, oh, she's like, I love polka dots or whatever. And I was like, oh, she's an interior designer. And they're like, what's that? And I was like, what? Like, how do you not know what that is? Like, but that's the thing, is that for a lot of people, we're all very involved in art. So these feel like, of course, moments. But for some people, they're in the sports or they're in the music and they don't pay attention to that literally at all. People don't pay attention to visuals. They walk into a place like my dad. My dad can walk into a place and he's just like, it feels nice in here. And I'm like, what makes you feel nice about it? He's like, I don't know, it's clean. Like, he doesn't understand that someone designed it. Like, he's just like, oh, it's nice, or it's not, you know what I mean? Or it's just like, this place is dirty or whatever. Like, he doesn't see the design aesthetic at all. So I realized that was the key thing. And a lot of people are that way. So then I was like, okay, in order to build more artists like ourselves, we have to go back, talk to the kids, and then talk to their parents so that their parents will support them. And understanding that this is a career that they can have. And in that way, from elementary school on, they're getting good. So they're actually taking classes. And by the time they get, because everyone goes to high school, I'm like, no, that's too late. Because now you're already going to college, and any of the kids that have been drawing their whole lives, you starting in high school, you go to college and now you feel behind, right? So if you're already at a point where there's like a couple of Black kids, I'll just speak for myself. There's a couple of Black kids that like to draw. There's a few of them that are going to fall off in elementary school and be into other stuff. They're not going to continue, right? So now you go to middle school and you're that weird Black kid that draws and everyone's like, oh, he draws. And you're by yourself where there's like one other person. You go to high school, like, see, there you go, right? You go to high school, that's right. You go to high school, now you're the only one. Then you go to college and you meet the only other person from another town. Like, you guys are all in it together, but there's like very few that go. And then in college, you've seen it, people either change their majors or they drop out or they just don't finish. So you get to college graduation and there's one or there's two. And then those are the people that go out in the workforce. And then guess what? You're discriminated to a degree in the workforce where you're not able to get jobs based on your name or how you look or whatever. And you get burned out and you get tired and then you fall off. Like, it's a whole thing of fall off. So I was like, that pipeline, we need to work on fixing that overall thing. And that's kind of what 90 stands for. It's like a conglomeration of getting people to work on projects, building a team, and producing great work while also going back and fixing these pipelines so that this isn't an issue 20 years from now. You know what I mean? It's not something that I'd like to be able to continue or be like, we're still championing this problem. I'm really actively trying to solve it.
So do you have anybody that does or reaches out to public schools and does any kind of like lectures to like that?
We've been partnering a lot with Nicole Herman, who does, she's a part, it's her and her partner, Allison Mann, and they are the BRIC Foundation, BRIC. They do a lot of work with that for women, and they also do a lot of work with like the Inglewood School District. They do a conglomeration of things to kind of make sure that there's representation and like fair choice and like resources. So we've been partnering with them and the Concept Art Association with Rachel and Nicole. So it's like we kind of partnered around, but we're also very open to, we try to amplify signals. So there's been a few people we reached out to, they're like, I have my own company. And we're like, okay, that's great. How can we work with you? How can we, and they're like shocked, like, you guys, like, it's like, yeah, we have, how can we amplify the signal? We're all trying to move in the same direction. So how can we work together? Like, that's the key component that's missing, is not going up and then leaving everybody behind and being like, I'm special. It's like, no, let's bring you and let's all move together. That's kind of how we've been working it.
Yeah, everything that we've talked about so far, as far as the makeup artists and the artists of, you know, the Black artists coming up and, you know, venturing out and like falling off and not doing what they dreamed of doing, or issues with being included in a company or because of their race or whatever. It just feels like it's across the board, whether you are in film or publishing, or it's really upsetting, because I know that there are students right now in art school that have no idea how to mix anything other than Caucasian flesh. They're not taught how to do anything other than that, right? And then you tell me, oh, well, there's makeup artists that have the exact same conversation. Wow, right? So,
and it's across the board. It's like, it's, you know, lighting as well. Like, they don't know how to light.
Oh man, lighting's a whole other
thing. Lighting. So me as a child, I understood lighting, and I always understood where my best points of light were. Like, it's just one of those things as an actor, when you're in front of the camera, you start to figure it out. And they'd be like, they'd go to my mom and they'd be like, Phil just refuses to move here. And then I'd be like, they'd ask me and I'd be like, yeah, because you're not gonna be able to see me. Like, I was like, that point right there. Like, if I stand right there, I'm completely gone. So it'd be one of those things where that's kind of a thing. And so it's like color balance, lighting, it's just gearing things. It's not even gearing things a specific way or not. It's just being inclusive of everyone and saying, how do we make this person look best, or how do we do this? There was a point where me and my wife were going to the Costume Designers Guild Awards, and we had gotten a makeup appointment for her at like Ulta for someone to do her makeup, and we still laugh about it because she literally had to just wipe the makeup off and do it herself. she ended up looking like, you know how like the Elizabethan days where they like powdered their face,
Oh
like
no.
her face was like white and then makeup was on top of it. And we were like, what did she try to do? And we're like, why didn't she just say she couldn't do it? Like it just was it was bad. Like I was like, babe, you could do your makeup much better than this. And so she just redid it and we laughed it off. But that's kind of, it's like you can tell there's just this like lack of specificity. I don't even want to say people don't care. It's just there's not enough. It's treated like an elective, like a specialty. Like, oh, that's a specialty, and it's like a person's not a specialty. You need to learn that. Like it's mandatory.
Right. Yeah, because it starts in school. I mean, we didn't learn how to render, like in painting, we didn't learn how to render kinky hair, curly hair. We didn't learn how to render dark skin. Like all these people are going through education without having a key part of their education included in that. And therefore, when we get out and become professionals, it's missing unless you take the active effort to learn how to do it, which is why there's specialists, which is why we're treated like an elective. And instead, it should be wrapped into the entire foundation of how you learn. And it blows my mind every day that it's missing from that.
We're all a part of that system. That's also an issue, which I remember there was a key point where my mom saw that I really liked drawing. And she asked me, she was like, how come you don't ever draw Black people? She just said it. And I was like, and I thought about it and I was like, I did the same thing where I was like, ah, and I was like, oh, I don't. Like, I literally don't, because I'm used to seeing, I'm drawing the things that I grew up with. So I'm drawing like superheroes that I used to, and like, you know, Spider-Man and Ninja Turtles and like all these different things, but I'm not drawing original Black characters. I'm not drawing them at all. So from that point, I started to pay attention to the fact that it was doing it. And then in my own work in film, what's been fun is to change those narratives. Like whenever a character doesn't have, especially in the script, if it doesn't have a race or a gender or any of those things, if it's just like blanketed, you know, kid, I'll draw something diverse. I'll always do that, because it's like they may not be thinking about that, because we all default to a certain visual we're used to seeing over and over again. So it's like, I would do a test when I would teach. Like, so I would say, okay, guys, I want all of you to draw the little best friend of the kid that's going on the adventure. 9 times out of 10, everybody will draw a fat little chubby redhead kid with freckles. Like it's just the character type we're used to seeing, right? So I'd be like, what about a little Asian girl with dreads? Or what about like, I'm like, try something else. Like, so I push them out. Or I would even laugh. I'd say, draw the little hero kid. And someone would draw like a blonde haired, blue eyed kid, right? And I'm like, okay, let's make that different. And then they'd be like, so then they'd make them like dark haired or something. And I'm like, no, like you're failing. They would go through like every shade of eyes and hair color, but the race
before landing on
it would just make
another
me
race.
laugh. Like, yeah, and I'd be like, maybe let's try a little Black girl going on an adventure, or a little Asian boy, or whatever it was. I was like, let's try something else. You know, let's try an Indian girl with a hijab. Let's try something else. Like, can we please try? Like, and I think that was the thing where people started to see, but also too, that you do run into problems where you start saying like, I don't know how to draw this particular skin tone or these facial features, and the proportions are all off and it looks weird or caricature-y or whatever. Like, you have to practice those things, and that should all be a part of your curriculum. You know, we're failing our kids if we're not teaching them those things as a part of their basic, like, this is a part of your curriculum.
We had a guest on that said to us that maybe it was after we stopped recording, that a client that she worked with wanted to hire more artists of color because they have no faith in their white artists' ability to paint dark skin.
It's bad. It's really bad.
It's bad.
It's
really bad.
2022,
people look ashy,
right?
They have no color in their skin, or their hair texture is just wrong. Like, I mean,
it's just a white it's a white features with just brown.
It's just bad. Or they're all drawn exactly the same. Like, there's like a few narratives. It's like the option is, okay, little Black boy, and he'll have like a flat top or something. And I'm like, a flat top still? That's what we're doing? Like, that's all we've got? We can't have anything else, just a flat top. Like, okay,
there's no other hairstyle.
Yeah, like no, and there's just no other options. And I'm just like, there's so many options, but it also shows you culturally how much we don't understand each other. You know, like, It's like, and that's something that I said too. One of the things, to be fair, that I've always said, especially during the time with all the political unrest and the presidency and all that, like everything that was going on during that time, was although we were tired and although you're frustrated after George Floyd, I would tell all my friends, I know you're tired. I know you don't want to, I know it's not your responsibility to explain these things to people, but now that people are listening, we have to have something to say. So it's like, it's up to us to actually now educate people because they're actually actively listening. Before, they just hear it and they're just like, it's not my thing.
Or one ear out the other.
Yeah, one ear out the other. That's all it really is. It's like, it's kind of like at this point now they're listening. So we have to kind of re-educate and kind of tell people like, and have them listen and figure things out. And that's kind of where that's been. But that's an important thing to do in order to kind of make progress and change, you know, is like, you have to be patient. And to a degree, you have to, I encourage everyone, you must talk to people that you are polar opposites from, that you don't agree with at all. If you're super liberal, go talk to some conservatives, talk to them and actually figure out how they feel and don't alienate them. It's hard. It's super hard to do. I'm not going to say it's easy, but I do it all the time because you start to then see the human side of like, why do you feel that way? And then what I also found out was a lot of our disagreements come from what? Education. We're at different education levels. So you could be arguing with someone online, you'll never change their view because their education level, I don't want to say it's dumb, they're just, their education level is not at the same starting point as you. So it's like, they could say like, well, everybody thinks this. And you're just like, no. And they're like, well, this statistic says this. And I'm like, okay, but do you know, like I could say, they'd be like, I don't believe in, you know, critical race theory. And I'm like, do you know about Tulsa? And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, exactly. Like, yeah. It's like, can't, like, it's like, and so then but you could spend a bunch of time arguing with them and telling them why that's important or what it actually is. But unless we start from the same base of education, we're always going to be going like this. And at the same time too, to a degree, because everyone feels that no matter what you believe, you also can't have a conversation with another human being and find that middle ground where we can move forward together if you insult them. So if you call them stupid or if you say whatever, or you're like, you know, even just like the keyword of like, you're deplorable. Guess what? Now that person that was sitting in the middle and didn't know which way to go, you're like, you're deplorable. They're like, well, I guess I'm just going to step on over on this side. Like, that's what happens. So in order for us all to find that middle part, we really do have to try to work together. And even if we disagree, we have to find the middle place where we're still moving in the same direction. And that's probably the hardest challenge in life, because I've learned humans are never going to agree on, they're never going to agree on one thing solely. You could stand up in an audience full of 1,000 people and you could say, I believe that everyone should love each other and get along. And there'll be one asshole that'll just be like, I disagree. And you're like, what? How do you disagree? That's just the way that, how do you disagree with that? There's always going to be that. So you have to find a balance. And that's kind of just how I think about that, you know, in general.
Yeah, and you also have to take care of yourself while you're doing it, because it is exhausting to educate people and put that energy out there, because there's some people, like you said, that are not willing to hear that from you, and they're set in their viewpoint. But it's important, if you have the energy, to try to make that dialogue happen. But if you have the energy, I think it's
if you have the energy. I will say I did learn to take some self-care moments and like protect my own mental health, because you can take in a lot, but you also don't realize it sits with you and you're processing it all the time. So at a certain point, I'm like, yeah, I need a break, or I can't be the middle. A lot of my friends, like my friend Ariane, calls me the bridge, because she feels like I'm always bridging things back together. But sometimes I'm like, this bridge has too many people on it and I need to kick some people off. This bridge is at maximum capacity and I need to clear it and take a moment. So that's kind of, it's an important part too, for sure.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I feel like I've also had to be that, because I've been viewed by a lot of people as the safe Black person to talk to. You probably know what that means. So so oftentimes people would defer to me and be like, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh God, like, I don't have the energy. And sometimes I would have to start telling them, I'm like, I don't have the energy to expend here right now, but if I have the energy later, I will come back to you on this. But right now, please find somebody else, because I can't be the one all the time.
Well, especially when you're in the room and you're the only one and everybody's just like, they'll say something like, let's say something like, it could be something simple, like, or something cultural, where they're just like we were thinking about giving this character a grill, and everyone kind of slowly, awkwardly like looks at you, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't wear grills. Like, you're like,
I can't be the voice for everybody.
Like, I don't know. Like, why are you looking at me for? Like, I don't even know what that is. Like, but of course, it's like that thing. And it makes me laugh. But it's like, at the same time, you don't want to be a monolith, but you also want to provide, you know, an active opinion. But it can be exhausting, and sometimes you do need a break. And I think that that's another reason why the teams need to be more diverse, so that they have more people on them, so there's different points of view. It's just really important. And also, it's important to get the nuances of people correct. Like when you travel's a big one. You start learning stuff, right? So you start seeing like certain cultures do things a very specific way. Like when I look at, like, my best friend growing up was Taiwanese, right? So I learned all these different things about Taiwanese culture. And then I learned a lot of things about Asian culture, because he would always teach me, like, these people are different than the, like, it's all different, and like they all do different things. So I would look at stuff, and I started to fall in love with like the specificity of, like, you know, you look at like a Japanese tea ceremony, and like they hold this way with this hand, and you pour this, like, I like the tradition of it. But then it also teaches you how everybody does. And then when Black Panther, I learned so much. I actually retained, that was my favorite part about Black Panther, is that I retained information about African culture. It wasn't some like thing where I just felt like I was disconnected from it. And I'm like, oh, we're all from Africa. And like, you try to like be supportive, but you don't know what you're doing, and you're wearing cloth, and you're just like, why am I wearing this kente cloth? This cloth could literally say I'm an idiot, and I have no idea because I haven't studied it, right? Like, it's that thing. So I started saying like, oh, I know what these tribes are, and why they do this, and why their hair is this way, and what they put in their hair, and what they cover themselves with, and what the, you know, the languages are. Like, that was a really fun experience to learn that. And then that kind of spawned me off into trying to figure out, like, what else can I learn? You know, like, what else can I figure out? And I feel like we all should be doing that. But the key thing for those projects is that if you have something that's geared towards a specific set of people, it would be nice to have some artists on that project that are that, because they're going to inherently know things that you don't know. They're going to know, like, oh yeah, we don't wear that color during this, or we don't do this thing, or we hold this way. Or there was a project where even just thinking about, like, they were like little African girls, like, you know how we're all used to sitting like crisscross applesauce, like Indian style or whatever, like that way. They sit with their knee, more like how Muslims pray. So they, like, their natural inclination to sit, sometimes depending on the culture, is to sit on their knees, like almost like Japanese people, how they sit. It's that, but that's like a resting position for them, which we would normally lay down or sit in a different way. So it's like, if you were animating that, it would be nice to have someone on the team that could get that nuance. Otherwise, it just feels like the color is right, the color of the person's right, but everything else is off, right? So it's like, you change this character and you made it a little Black boy, but then nothing in his room is relatable to me. So it just reads as untrue. That's what we're missing, right? Is like, you can't, it's almost like, to a degree, it's like animation blackface. It's like, you've changed the thing, or you've made a point to try to be diverse and say, okay, we're gonna make this a little Asian girl. But if the Asian women, or like, if Asian people can't relate to what's in her room, or how she moves, or how she talks, you've just made her that race by visual and not by culture, or not by habits, or any of that stuff. One of the key scenes that I remember seeing in Soul was the barbershop scene. I was like, they got that completely right.
Yeah.
The way he moves his hands, the way he talks, like the way he's, like, the whole thing, that scene, I was like, they actually got that right. That felt correct to me. And I was like, and that matters. It actually matters. They could have just done it to where they're animating like normal. And it's like, they were like, no, this is the way he does. And he moves his hand like this. And I could actually feel that felt like someone actually figured it out, and they didn't shy away from it. In Moana, I thought it was great that there were full songs in the native language that weren't in English. Great. That's what we need. And hopefully you have people in your team that relate to that. So that's kind of another thing that 9B has done, is really try to be specific. So we'd say, and we also are very verbal. We'll get on a project and we'll say, do you have Black writers? What's going on with this? Or we'll say like, hey, this feels offensive. Like this, you could run into people feeling a certain kind of way about this. Or, you know, it's the nuance. And I feel like now it's about time. And what's great is that it is changing. We are at the point where where we're starting, we will see culture-wise, like the next couple of years, even projects that are coming out that are geared towards marginalized people. And they're the star. Like, it's like literally like, this is this project, we've pitched it, it came out, and it is like, for better or worse, even if you can't relate to it, we need that. We need people to start being able to empathize and relate to people that don't have their background. That's probably one of the key things that I think is missing for a lot of us, especially in this country, is the ability to be able to do or relate to people that aren't you and still see the humanity in it. If we can find that, I feel like we'll be in a better place. I remember a few years back, there was a video game that had like, it stirred up all this trouble because it didn't let you pick your avatar and it picked it for you and it made a random avatar. And to be frank, there was a bunch of white people freaking out and saying like, it made me a Black woman. Like, I don't relate to this. And it's like, welcome to our world.
Yeah.
All day. Like even in the grocery store, I make people laugh and I say like, there's a whole aisle of products I can't use. And I always got to go and zero in on this one little part that's like dedicated to where my stuff is. So it's funny to me where it's just like, but that's just a part of my reality. So I'm used to doing it. I'm used to fully using my imagination to look at a movie like Harry Potter and imagining myself as Harry Potter. I'm that, but what I realize is if you never use that muscle, you become entitled to seeing everything look exactly like you. Yes. And you're not actually actively saying like, oh, you know, like you're not actively using your imagination and like putting yourself in that thing. Another thing that I've seen that's been really interesting, I went to visit Rachel and saw her kids. And one of the things that I loved is her daughter had multicolored dolls. To see that was just like, and it's not a thing. It's just she's growing up with dolls that are all different colors. Great. That's the way it should be. Yes. Like, who's to say that when you take your daughter, my daughter, same thing. When I take her to the store, she doesn't have to get a Black doll. It'd be great if she got a Latin one, a white one. I want her to grow up knowing that there are multiple people in the world and that that's what it is. And if she likes that thing, she likes that thing. But I don't want to make it so specific that she loses that muscle to where she can't relate to anyone that doesn't look like her. Yeah. Or doesn't talk like her, or doesn't have her exact story. So I feel like that's kind of the push that we're all doing now, is trying to get people to say like, it's okay. This person's completely different from you. Do you feel what they felt when they were sad? Did you feel sad? Did you actually, you know, can you emote with them? Can you empathize with them? That's what we need.
Yeah. Preach.
It should be simple, but it's really difficult. It's a very difficult thing to get people to see. I just saw a review on the movie Seeing Red.
Turning red.
Turning red.
Yeah, I was reading that discourse as well. Yep.
So yeah, and he, the guy, I hate saying this because I can't recall it back, but he just cannot see how offensive what he said was. Like, he can't.
It's exhausting. I'm like, it's exhausting for you to try to see things out of the eyes of an Asian girl. Like that's the whole thing.
I was gonna say, yeah, adding to what you were saying about like, it's, you know, all about education and essentially empathy. Empathizing and not owning, you know, because you're not trying to own the culture, you're trying to, you know, relate to the person of it. And when I read that review and then watched the movie, I was like, there's, as the director says it, it's a love letter to Toronto, it's a love letter to Canada, it's a love letter to, you know, their upbringing. But nothing about the movie, well, not nothing, but not a whole lot about the movie is really emphasized so much that it's about like a foreign like location. A lot of it is like very relatable to like most, I would say, teenagers or become or you know, tweens of the 2000s. And this person couldn't see past that. The review or the introduction to the film was, you know, ethnicity, different country. Like all they saw was Chinese Canadian.
And he immediately separated himself completely from that.
That's such a problem with literally everyone, even for people you meet in person, just media you intake. And like something I found really interesting as you were, you know, explaining, especially 9B, about being collaborative, you know, that creates that empathy where you're working with somebody, right? And you're trying to learn more about each other. Even if, you know, many things are similar, we are still our own individuals, right? So we all have our nuances too. And that adds so much to like the flavor. And like the thing that I was very curious about for 9B is like, as you're explaining like all the things that, you know, you're doing, what is, you know, I should say that's, you know, similar to some charitable work, essentially educational work. Like, you know, what is there a certain direction you were seeing for, you know, 9B? Like, what's the path forward with them? Because, you know, as you were saying, actionable items. right? Not just like, oh yes, I want to add diversity, right? You know, goals and future.
I think we are right now, we're on a good path. We've done some work. We've been working in animation. So we've done stuff with Netflix animation, Sony Pictures animation. We're doing a big live action DC superhero project right now. So we've kind of, in each one of those ones, we've built teams that have been diverse or very specific to the thing that we're working on, right? So it's been really helpful. Like one of the projects was geared more towards African. And so we had literal African artists that were from that region working on that project. And the work that we got back was so great and so specific and like so dead on for what they were looking for and beyond, because those people understand that. So that's one of the first things, is like making sure we crew up to try to make sure it's fitting the narrative. The key thing that I think the goals that we have is to eventually maybe do our own IPs so we can create projects and create opportunities for people, and also bring in people to say like, I am South Korean and I have this idea about this, and to build a team to where they can feel supported, understood, and have the opportunity to share that story without the filter of someone trying to make it something that's more relatable to westernized eyes. Is an important one for us. So I think that that's an option or a goal. The other key one that we've done is we have built a community. So anyone that signs up for 9B, we have a Slack channel to make sure that they can all converse and talk to each other. We're trying to build that up now so that they can like share work and just feel a place of belonging. Like if there's no place you can go, you can always come here and have like-minded individuals or some artists that look like you are, or are struggling and going through the same struggle you are. I think that's important. And so that's been another actionable item, along with just like going back and volunteering. Like I am very good at volunteering my time to talk to people, and I often do it without expecting anything back, meaning that I'll go and they'll be like, we only have this much. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was doing this for free. Like I just would come and talk because I think that message needs to spread. Another thing that we've been doing is trying to make sure we wanted to go back and not only support the kids, especially in underserved communities, because they don't have a lot of resources, but bringing resources with us. So saying like, hey, Wacom, can you give these kids tablets? Hey, so-and-so, can you, or like, even if it's just one, like, can we get an iPad that goes in the computer lab so the kids can come and work on Procreate? Like, can we do that? Like, it's that thing. It's like really putting it out to understand that not everyone's going to have these things. And to a certain extent, sometimes we think too big. I was like, let's get all these computers and stuff. And I'm like, or we could just teach them to draw on paper, like I'm like, we could get them paper and pencil, like, like the olden days, like that type of deal. So it's trying to find a balance. But we are actively working on all those things. I think we'll eventually move into like IPs and stuff like that, and trying to create opportunities. And then also the other key thing is that it's really interesting is that there are a lot of people of color that have great ideas, but they don't have the resources to get them pitched and done. So we also wanted to provide a place to where you're coming in, you've got an idea, and we have highly professional, skilled artists that can execute that idea so that you're on the same level playing field as everyone else that goes into pitch. That's a big, important one. A lot of people will have a fantastic idea and they're like, oh, cousin so-and-so can draw. So they just kind of ask someone and the drawings just are like not as great, or like, it's just not as professional. So I tried to make sure that there was a balance to where we're providing a service to people and also working with them to where it's not about money. Like, I'm like, is it possible for us to support this with whatever little bit that they have to make sure that they go in and they can present the same unified front that a lot of people that are afforded more opportunities can have. So that's kind of a key thing that we've been doing as well, and working with, big projects and little projects, and just trying to say like, we support you, or we are here for you. It's that type of deal. And then finding resources of other people that are like-minded that will do the same, to where they don't necessarily always have to get the big payday. And it's more about, we need to support this so that we can see this story, so that we can have this, or other kids can have this example to grow up with. So that's kind of been the main goal You know, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's doable, and sometimes it's not. But we definitely have been working and trying to make sure we put our money where our mouth is, you know, like that type of deal, to execute and deliver. And in the projects that we've been on so far, I think that one of the things that's happened too is that people have been really surprised at the output and how much work we're able to get done, and the quality of the work at the same time, to make sure that it's all cohesive. And at some point, I hope to where that just doesn't become surprising, where it becomes, you know, the norm. The other thing that's been really fun to watch too is to watch a studio be impressed by work from week to week, and then be curious and ask, like, where did you find this artist? And I'm like, that same artist has applied to you 5 times. They've been there the entire time. You just didn't give them the opportunity, or you just didn't see their potential. That's the key thing. Or like, what's this magic? What are you guys doing? And it's like, we call people, we reach out to them, we see their potential, and we're saying, this person, all they need is an opportunity and they will soar. But every time they reach out to you, you're asking them what they've accomplished, as opposed to hiring them for their potential. And then they have years of that before they're finally able to get on jobs, and then they're bitter and they're tired. Like, you're just draining all the resources. Meanwhile, a kid that looks more like in the vein of what you're used to hiring gets straight out of school and gets this awesome opportunity based on them being nice or being whatever, or just you feeling like they have potential. And they get the golden ticket to go off and have the fun career. Meanwhile, someone else is literally more talented or as equally talented, and they're just sitting idle, waiting for that opportunity to come, and then getting bitter and then doing something else. Like, that's kind of what it is. So that's been really interesting to watch too, is them to like, people to like completely fan out over this artist. And I'm like, they've literally been here begging you for a job and you just didn't see it. So that's another thing that we've been trying to kind of make sure that we kind of, you know, equally put the playing field. Because I think when people do it too, the one thing that'll frustrate me is whenever you talk about diversity, people act like it's like a handout. They're like, oh, you're just getting hired just because you're Black. And it's like, no, it's not like I just randomly said, let's go to Walmart and just pull a random Black person and give them this job. It's like, I'm looking for a highly professional person that can do the job, that hasn't had the opportunity. So it's not, it's like, there's still criteria. You have to be able to deliver and you have to be able to do the job. I'm just providing you an opportunity to do that. And that's what we strive to do, is try to look at it and say, here's your opportunity, here's your shot. But we also set up artists to not fail, meaning that we make sure, like, we might have a project where we have enough for 3 artists, 2 of those will be senior and 1's junior. And we make sure that the junior artist has enough support to where the whole presentation from week to week isn't dependent on them delivering, so that they can learn. Then they get out of that project, they have experience. And then what's great about that is they can go to their next project and be like, if people are hiring based on what they've accomplished, now they've had the opportunity to accomplish something. So it's like it's a whole pipeline of just trying to solve these little microaggressions and problems that we all find. And it's difficult, and it's a lot of work. Like, we all have full-time jobs and we're doing 9B, you know, and it's all virtual.
So I just, out of just curiosity, because you have a group of amazingly talented people, are they all individually in the guild, or is 9B Collective like a part of the Art Directors Guild?
No, it's like a studio. So we're a studio. We're like an outsourced studio.
Okay.
So
all right. That's okay.
That's kind of that's primarily how we function. So we have members, we have a lot of illustrators that are union, and we have some that aren't, but they're all kind of paired together, and the studio usually hires us as an outsourcing company.
Got it. Okay.
So like, need a certain amount of this or a certain amount of that or whatever. And then they hire us, they hire 9B like as an independent contractor.
Got it. Okay. So that's the workaround for some people not being in that union.
To a degree, but what we also do is, like, I've been in the union, I'm very pro-union, I'm on the board of my union. So we make sure that specifically, like, if we're working on something that is union, that we try to hire union illustrators, you know what I mean, to make sure that they know that we are working with the union. And maybe at some point, one of like Esther said, maybe one of our goals eventually will be to be a union studio, you know, to where that way we can provide benefits and all the stuff that happens that unions do. So that's something that's definitely a goal. We're not anti-union, and we definitely aren't trying to go around so much, as it does provide an opportunity for people to get work experience in a thing where it's like, okay, we have 4 weeks of work. let's hire an independent contractor to get that done. And oftentimes too, what ends up happening is that we shift, meaning that there might be like some pre-production work, like just conceptual work where we're working on it. And then as it goes union, we switch into union illustrators. So it's like, it's kind of a, we're trying to work with the system, but we're also trying to provide opportunities. And that's a way to do it, because everybody can hire independent contractors. You don't necessarily have to be that way. It's just they're also trying to make sure that we hire a union, and we provide that as well. So it's kind of a part and part.
Amazing. Phillip, earlier you were talking about how you also work with other companies that just share your vision and they want to just, to help in any way they can. Is there any way that anyone listening now that might want to do that could reach out to you guys and get involved with the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to write us. You can write us at 9bcollective@gmail.com. So that's the first way, or you can go to our website and hit the little like contact us button, and it'll set up a form for you to email us. And that'll be, the way that we kind of can see work. So you can send us portfolios. We do a lot of portfolio reviews like weekly. We're also reaching out to artists just on like seeing their artwork on different websites and stuff like that, and contacting them, or people recommend artists to us, and we'll look. If we feel like you're ready, we put you on the roster to maybe be potentially work, because that's what it is too. We build the community, but then our roster is really strong. So we look through the roster based on the projects that come to us. So we say, oh, this project just came to us and it's in a more kid style. Who does that? We look through the roster, we see, we make it fair. We reach out and say, do you have time? A lot of our illustrators too are also on other stuff. So they're either full-time on something or they're freelance, for the most part. So then we put together the team based on availability. So it's like, Esther might say, I'm working full-time at blah, 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 but I can only give you like 2 days a week, or I can give you 2 hours or whatever it is. Then we work and say, okay, who can balance that out and give us more or whatever. That way we know what to expect, but then we're also able to still work with people even when they're working on other stuff, right? Because we know that we're not ever going to find like 5 illustrators that are all freelance and all need to be full-time. So it's kind of like we've geared it towards that. And then we just art direct from week to week and work with people's schedules to make sure we're delivering, whatever it is that we need. And so that's kind of how we've been kind of working it through for now,
Yeah. And what about on the school side of things, like the school pipeline thing that you were talking about with the,
With the school pipeline, we're slowly building that now. We've been reaching out to schools to see if we can go and do seminars or to reach out to them. We have educators, especially after South by Southwest, which I just attended, where educators are reaching out to us to see if we can talk to their kids. We do Zooms all the time. We talk to them. We look at senior theses or like final projects. I talk to classrooms a lot. So we've been doing a lot of that, or we'll travel, to go and see. I travel every year to Grand Rapids, Michigan for the Mosaic Film Festival, which is serving kids there, like underserved. It's like mainly Black and Latino kids, and showcasing like what I do there to show them that job is possible. And I just do that just because I want to. It's a good, the program director, Scott Welch, has become a really good friend of mine. And kind of show me and introduce me to different things along the way to kind of help formulate and be active in different communities. And then Michael Wandy, the other co-founder, one of our other co-founders, is really active in education. Like, I think one of his goals has always been to maybe open up a school one day, because he really believes in education and fixing the pipeline so that the journey for kids in education isn't the same that he had, which he had some bumps in the road and stuff like that in terms of like being represented or being seen. So it's a lot of fixing, but we definitely encourage people to just reach out to us, at least on our website, which is 9bcollective.com. That way, then we can kind of formulate it. Our producers can kind of go through and weed out like things that we can do. And then we just try to work with people to make it happen.
Is there anything that you wanted to leave our listeners with? Any advice for them, or anything that you just want to promote in general? Yeah.
I think that for me, I want to encourage people to get involved. If you've got an idea, do that idea. If you have an idea for your own company, do that idea. If you have people you can work with, like I said, we partner. One of the companies, I'll give them a shout out right now, is the Art Chitagio, which is Darnell.
Yes.
We work with them now as well to try to make sure, like, we don't do animation. So sometimes we'll do like storyboarding or whatever. So we've kind of been working with them to try and figure out how ways we can work and support each other, because we believe in their company and they believe in what we're doing. So we're like, let's partner and see if we can work together. And that's been great. I feel like it's about that community and building it and understanding that no one will build it if you don't build it yourself. So it's just like at this point, I try, like I said, the energy that I try to put out is if something can be complained about where it's like years and years and you're still having the same conversation, I try to step in and be like, how do we solve this? Like, I really don't want to have this conversation until retirement, or I don't want to be stuck feeling like it's the same, years from now, or even, a week from now. I want to see like, how can we start feeling like we're doing that? It just feels good, but it also makes it to where we're not stuck. And so I would encourage you to do that. If you're a student and you're looking into getting into this, find programs. There's so many things online for free now, just even tutorials. There's so many amazing artists just doing amazing work where they're showing you their process in Procreate and Photoshop and all those things. Like, the resources are there. So if you love it, get involved, start doing your artwork by any means necessary. Go to conventions, well, right now, but like as things open, go to things are starting to open back up to a degree. Network, and also if you're a filmmaker, make films. You have your phones. Like, if you have a phone, if you're privileged enough to have a phone, go out and make a film with your phone. Get your friends together, shoot some dialogue, whatever you can do. If you like animating, animate on the weekends. Like, I know I just told a story about Jose Fernandez, who founded Ironhead Studios, which they do a lot of the specialty costumes. He's worked on Batman for the last 20 years. He's the first person to make Batman be able to move his head like the actual cow, because before, he would turn like this because he couldn't move his head. He did all of that, and he's worked on all these things. And one of the things that I love about his story is that he wasn't the best student, barely graduated high school, got his GED. And what he did within the time that he had between odds and ends jobs is he took up sculpting because he loved it, and he became really good at it. Just sculpting, which led to him now having a multi-million-dollar company, a very successful company that everybody depends on. I mean, he makes a lot of the superhero suits that you see today, like Black Manta, Black Panther, Wonder Woman. Like, I could go on. His list is massive. But that all came from the key thing that I saw in his story that is really great is the passion and the drive to not relent to get that done. Like, meaning that he's like, I work at this random job during the day and I'd come home at night and sculpt for 4 or 5 hours, like, and then go back and do the same thing. And on jobs where he could bring his sculptures with him, he would bring them to work and then go in the back and be sculpting. So it's like, he got that time. And I feel like you have to have that drive. So I would like to encourage everybody to do that. And if you see something that needs to be changed, don't be the person that just goes on Twitter and just complains about it and says, this needs to change, and feel like you did something. I assure you, you have not. You're just literally wasting your time. Please go out into the world and make something happen. For better or worse, it's always going to get better if you are actionable. So that's kind of what I want to leave people with. And, follow us, join 9B, join us, and, we'd love to have you. We do put in work, and like, we do also foster up artists. Like, we do mentorship too. We do portfolio reviews to provide people with the opportunity to learn. And we will be honest. We'll say your portfolio needs this, or you need more anatomy, or whatever. We're honest with it to get you to a point to where you can actually reach your goal. And I'd say that's it. And the last thing is I want to give a shout out to Mr. Aldous Hodge, who is playing Hawkman in Black Adam. They just revealed his costume a little while ago. We're very excited for him. And so make sure you go and watch that as well. I think if I could leave young people with anything, it's to let them know that the job in itself is your skill set. So it's not becoming famous. It's not working with famous people. All of that is fluff. The main thing that you need to worry about is how you can improve your skills and get better. And that's all you should be focused on, because everything else becomes a caveat of that. It becomes like an offshot of that. Like, I would have never expected to do the things that I've done, but it's just from trying to be as good at my job as possible as I can possibly be.
I think everything you said is just fantastic. And just to talk to you and to see all the different avenues your career has, branched out into just from knowing how to draw and paint. That's awesome.
There's a lot there. So I hope that encourages people to do something, and also to let them know that they don't have to be stuck. So you can do pretty much anything. There's so many places that your art can take you. It's just the main key thing for you is to try to get good at your art. and to be communicative. And also, one of the key things that someone told me, and I'll leave you with this, which was sometimes it's not even about your work, it's about being a person that people like being around. Michael Kaplan told me that on Star Trek. So when he hired me, I wasn't the best illustrator by any means. There were tons of illustrators. I mean, these are like working professionals that he could have hired. And so I asked them because it was really bothering me. I was sitting there and sometimes I was struggling, my proportions weren't right, or I couldn't get something, or I couldn't nail something that he was asking me to do. And so I just asked him one day and I said, why did you hire me? There's so many other illustrators that you could have hired. And he said, sometimes it's less about what a person can do and more about being around someone that you can work with and having a good personality or a good attitude. So that's something that everybody needs to know too, is that all of those things are together. You could be the best artist, but if you're super like, you know, if your attitude is bad, no one's going to want to work with you. And to a degree, it's like, even if you're like super like introverted, right? If you can't communicate with people, you have to find that skill set. Now, granted, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you don't have to go so far outside of yourself that you're not being yourself, but you do have to have those skills. So that's something that it's one of those things where you have to be able to provide that service. And I think it's also too, it's just trying to be the best person that you can be. I think that that's a key thing. That skill set will take you far. I'm obviously extroverted and a people person, but I also, at a certain point, I get burned out too, where I kind of need a little bit of a break. But I draw energy from people, and a lot of people I know are the exact opposite. People draw energy from them and they're just like, I need all of you to be gone. So it's definitely a toss-up, but I will leave you with that and say that that's also an important skill that you should be building, is your people skills along with your art skills. And if you can find the perfect balance of that, then you'll be fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of this, Phil. This has been amazing.
No problem. This was fun.
Phil, it's always great to talk to you. Great to see you again. This is like they said, this has been a fantastic interview, and just such a wealth of information that you were able to share with our audience. We definitely want to have you on again. Keep pushing it forward. Keep letting people know about the company and what you guys are up to. If there's any way that we can help push that signal forward, in any way, just let us know.
Please let us know.
You know,
definitely will do.
And yeah, that's about it. That's what I got.
Thank
you. All right. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.